Welcome back. So we've got an update to the Sony story that blew up regarding them planning to pull down the PS3 and PS Vita stores. Now, this is something that pissed off a lot of people at the time. Some people are still using those consoles. In the case of the Vita, it had, well, basically a passionate fan base, because for what it was, the Vita was actually a pretty awesome little bit of kit. And, yeah, there was a lot of unhappiness. Sony, of course, ended up doing a 180 in that, confirming that the stores would stay operational. This was seen as a big win in the gaming community. It helped those platforms be alive, and people were generally just pleased to have actually been listened to. Now, there's been a bit of a change, and it's a bit of a change that could be taken in a very big inflammatory way. However, there are, I think, reasonable reasons behind this, and it's important to do this coverage responsibly and not over-catastrophize, because this store is still going to be there. And I think if you actually logically think through why they have done this in the way that they've done it, and you think about how I believe Nintendo are planning similar, you can start to piece together what might actually be going on here, and this maybe will allow us to retroactively understand the story in the first place. So, from October 27th, players will no longer be able to use credit card, debit card, or PayPal on either the PS3 or PS Vita. That includes adding money to the wallet, so you just can't use any of that shit, right? Now, if you want to buy something on those stores, you can, but you'll need to add wallets to your PlayStation Store account using the PlayStation Store website, the mobile phone app, or the PS4 or PS5 console. And though that said, the gift cards will remain active beyond the closure date. So basically, you want to go to the Vita store, buy a game with your credit card. No, you've got to get your phone app, do it in the PS Store, add in via the wallet, which is not always the most convenient. I believe, is there gradations in how much you can add to the wallet at once?
I think I'm not sure about gradations, but I'm fairly sure there's at least a minimum.
Okay, yeah, so there could be something there. But basically, it's just more of a roundabout way of doing things. Now, there's a few ways we can take this. Way number one, Sony are slowly increasing friction to accessing the store experience in the two of those so that they can eventually justify shutting them down for a lack of use. You could see that. However, I did just some cursory digging, some cursory research before this, and I saw a lot of people saying that they actually did, whenever Sony reopened the store, they did try to buy things with their credit, debit card, etc., and they repeatedly had the store fail. I saw a few reports of that. I then saw reports of security issues, and the PS3 fundamentally not being able to handle more modern encryption. I believe the Vita can, but maybe it's only a matter of time for the Vita, and perhaps those stores are on similar architecture or something. So we know that Sony have been utterly reamed when it comes to security issues in the past. I mean, think about how much money the whole PS shutdown, cost them back when that happened. I mean, take a game like Mag, that was half killed. It was very inopportune. So that was an awful thing for Sony to have had, a really awful thing for Sony's customers, obviously. So they're probably sensitive to that sort of issue. And when we take a look at this, and we see a situation where security stuff is perhaps not ideal on those older consoles, where, security for payments is a very important thing, and where there were user reports of just purchases failing. And I mean, look, if a purchase fails for me twice in a row, usually I won't even try the third time because I know that it could block my account and I'll have to phone my bank. So it seemed like there was a bunch of instability, perhaps in the credit and debit card payment options. And you could say here that they do intend, there's ways of taking this. There is what I said earlier there, that Sony is just trying to quietly wrap all of this stuff up and send it out to pasture and be done with it. Or it could be that they believe that the only way that they can viably keep this store going is to remove that store from payments. Because you got to remember, say you're using Battle.net balance for a Blizzard game. You buy a game with Battle.net balance, no payment processing occurs. The payment processing occurs at the point of adding funds to your wallet. And with a system like this, it's always going to be done on the more modern systems in operation on the PS4, PS5, PS App, and PlayStation Store website, versus the older things that some users were reporting weren't really working that well. And I think just about everybody can say that a user experience of, I entered my credit card and the first 3 times it didn't work, that is a bad user experience that you do not want to be shipping. So, There's no payment processing if you added funds to your account and then you log into your PS Vita and buy a game, because that is just deducting how much funds you have on like a Sony database. There's no talk to a payment processor, no really anything like that. It's a very simple, safe, secure, and easy to implement thing. So that's actually what I think is going on. I have a feeling that that's why they tried to shut the stores down originally. Yeah. And that maybe they were surprised by the backlash because they undervalued their back catalog. I think as evidenced by a few of Jim Ryan's rather unfortunate utterances that did not do him any good. I think that this is just the way they're going to have to do it. And I believe other companies are actually doing the same thing or are planning to do the same thing for their legacy hardware. And if we're in a world where we're going to ream Sony for something and assume bad faith, but we're going to give a free pass to everyone else, that is decidedly unfair.
Yeah, I guess when you compare that to Nintendo, absolutely, they have the same issues, largely across the board, of not respecting their back catalog, especially Nintendo games when they physically don't drop in price very much. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to play old Nintendo games, and I think that's a complete failing on their end.
And there's so many times where like Nintendo are the greatest advertisers for piracy ever.
Of course, like, absolutely.
Good example. My girlfriend loves Pokemon games. Mm-hmm. There's loads of them that are like decently modern. You can't get them.
Yeah,
you cannot get them, and a used copy is extremely fucking expensive. No wonder emulation is so big in the Nintendo space, and they just know scarcity. They know. I mean, it's Nintendo. We know they know how to use scarcity really well.
Yeah, I mean, they did it recently with the Super Mario 3D All Stars. Like, and we're just going to stop selling this after point. Why? Because we think that's a reasonable thing to do. Like, no, it's not, you money grubbing bastards. Anyway, I feel like or at least another angle to look at this is, because you've got PlayStation doing this, you've got Nintendo doing it for the 3DS Wii U. I imagine, it'll happen before long with the 360, because if it's a generation of literal hardware without updates, that's going to be the case. But Xbox have one massive difference. 360 games aren't just launched into the bin, because backwards compatibility has been a huge focus of theirs. So as far as the customer experience goes, sure, it's a bad thing if you're not going to be able to pay stuff directly with your 360, or if that console, that hardware gets obsoleted. Your games, which is likely the stuff you care about more, largely speaking, especially with a console, because it's going to be different for handheld, because that's the entire experience, but a console's just hooked up to a TV.
Yeah.
So, replace a console, that's fine, especially you can get something sort of reasonably cheap like a Series S, and then you just got all your games still. Where that's a case of, I feel like a lot of the Sony backlash for this would, because this wouldn't be a story if you could buy those games and play them on the PS4 and PS5.
Yeah.
Basically, exactly. Everyone would go, well, it's time to move on hardware-wise than PS3 anyway, because it's an awful piece of shit. So it's a case of, I love it, but I hate it. I think that that should be the focus forward. No one's ever going to expect it of Nintendo, because they're so isolated and quite clearly at complete odds with what the gaming industry generally does.
And when it comes to online stores and stuff, they're just weird with everything they do.
Yeah, they're a nightmare, but at least it's looking at this, you're like, well, hopefully they can see all the demand for the PS3 and Vita stuff. Hopefully they see a decent amount of, uptick in PlayStation Wallet usage after this, especially from those people who love the Vita. Because I think that console's going to live for like years and years still, just because of how good it is as a console.
Multiple times over, you've almost convinced me to buy one. Yeah. I haven't for like video games I'm going to go and play in this. Yeah. I have not found a reason to buy a PS Vita.
Yep.
But it's just a really neat piece of kit. It looks nice. The screen apparently is it's an OLED, isn't it?
I can't remember which versions aren't, but the original version, I think, and a decent portion of them are OLED, because I think I have the OLED one still.
Yeah, I mean, wow.
Yeah, I mean, how many years later have Nintendo released the Switch with an OLED?
Yeah. So it seems like a great piece of hardware. It's just I need someone like you to say, hey, here's all the games.
Yeah.
And then maybe I will be filling up my wallet and buying some of them.
Yeah, so that's the thing. If they can find a way to make that work for people, which with the Vita kind of hard because you can't really refresh the hardware, whatever else. But maybe it's worth them keeping in mind. Okay, maybe we should think of a solution to, because obviously you can play PS3 games via PlayStation Now, which obviously has, it's running on cell hardware and then streamed to you. I think they need to get, because RPCS3, I can't remember what order the letters are in. PS3 emulation is definitely coming along pretty well. It's still a nightmare, but it's like if emulation, if emulator devs can do that, why can't Sony devote a decent amount of time and energy to do that, to do their customers right?
Yeah.
I think that's a thing kind of going forward from this story, where it's like, that's the lesson they can learn. Actually capitalize on the interest that players have in your older stuff, because otherwise you're just wasting it.
And Sony actually has got a pretty cool back catalog.
It really
As
do.
we've talked about before.
Yeah, I mean, I personally can't wait for PS3 emulation to be really good, because then I can go and play a lot of games that I liked on PS3 but ran like utter dog shit.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll run reasonably well. I think one of the examples is Drakengard 3. Drakengard 3 runs like absolute shit on the PS3. There's no way to play that legally or, properly without piracy in a way that's effective. But then throw it on an emulator, runs 60 beautifully. And that's like, okay, well, like...
Does it turn into a good game?
No, no, it doesn't turn into a good game. It turns into a reasonable game. But you just like, why are they not capitalizing on that? I guess the more money in remasters. But
I think that, so all this is just to highlight that we should try to look at all angles and stories like this, but no matter what, I think we can all agree that Microsoft has totally done the right thing and done the good thing by prioritizing backwards compatibility so much. Could be that it's easier for them to do because they didn't have the cell architecture to wrestle with, but I mean, as you just said, open source emulator devs are doing a great job. Surely a Sony could do it. Though that said, there is some talk that, like, we were even discussing this it was a psychology study, wasn't it? About commits by open source devs, and it was about intrinsic and extrinsic rewards.
oh yeah,
So there maybe is an argument to be made there that it's pretty hard to beat that just passion-based work being done. So I suppose on that vaguely hopeful note, that's it for today's story. Sell me on a PS Vita. What's the one game that's going to get me there? Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.